Good afternoon, friends. Wheel alignment, how do you work with it? What mistakes should you avoid? How do you avoid breaking equipment? Today, Valentin will tell you. He specializes in installation and maintenance of the Instellu 100.
Good afternoon. Our task is to understand the step-by-step process of working with the equipment, and now we will demonstrate this to you. Before starting work, we drive the car onto the alignment bay and position it in front of the turntables so that we don't stop on the turntables and don't damage them when braking. Before starting work with the car, you should complete 3 steps. Check the vehicle's suspension, check the tire pressure, and inspect the tire tread. After completing the preparations, set the turntables to match the vehicle's track width and manually roll the car onto the turntables by pushing it from the rear wheel. How do you work with the wheel alignment system? Today, we will show you in simulation mode. Before installing the clamp with the target on the wheel, we perform a check. Carefully check the centering of the clamp to precisely see if it aligns in the exact center or not. It is important to make sure our targets are securely installed in place and that there are no visible cracks on the target housings. Install the clamps with the targets onto the vehicle's wheels. After preparing the vehicle, proceed to work with the software. For simulation purposes, let's select our test vehicle. Insert the targets according to the level shown on the screen. If the rolling procedure was unsuccessful, we might see errors like these. If they are more than 3 or 4 minutes, it's worth retaking the readings with the vehicle. Roll the vehicle by the rear wheel, using wheel chocks. The front wheel chock serves as our reference point, to which we will return. Carefully return the vehicle to its original position. After touching the front wheel chock, do not press, and place the second wheel chock. Our stand allows us to measure the car's data quite accurately, even if the car did not move in a perfectly straight line. For accuracy, it makes sense to straighten the wheel and perform the rolling procedure again. On a car that moves almost perfectly straight, perform the vehicle compensation again. To straighten the wheel, do not remove the cotter pins from the turntables and do not take out the bridge. To repeat the compensation, go to the top menu on the left and select Repeat Compensation. Install the brake depressor and prepare the steering depressor. Remove the cotter pins from the turntables and take out the rolling bridges. Take the measurement with the engine running to simulate the suspension's behavior while the car is in motion. The electric or hydraulic power steering will load the suspension just as it would in real life. There will be tension on the tie rod end. How will the steering bar be positioned in this case? At this point, it doesn't really matter, because our main task is to measure the car as it drives straight, and to lock in the position of the car when it's going as straight as possible. In this position, we install the steering depressor, set the wheels straight, and secure them. How will the steering bar end up? Right now, it doesn't matter. If the steering wheel is still crooked, we leave it crooked. Let's move on to the adjustment, but here we won't be able to see the vehicle's tolerances. So we select Change View and switch to 2D mode. Here we can view the data as diagrams at this point. And this diagram shows us that we're seeing the data for a car that's driving perfectly straight ahead. This position allows us to see the most accurate readings for a car that's driving on the road and not trying to veer off anywhere. We start working with the rear axle on a car that's going straight. At the same time, its steering wheel might not be perfectly straight. If the car needed to be turned off, we've turned it off. And we inspect the rear suspension, and if possible, we adjust it. If the car clearly has some defects and there are no adjustments provided, neither tolerances nor adjustments are available. This means that the car cannot be properly adjusted, the front axle cannot be aligned, because the rear axle will throw the car off and the car will drift off the road. After finishing the inspection, and if it's possible to adjust the rear axle, we move on to the front axle. Accordingly, if the car allows it, it makes sense to adjust the camber and the caster angle on a car that drives as straight as possible. If, for some particular reason, we were compelled to turn the steering wheel either to the right or to the left, perhaps in an attempt to meticulously correct the displayed readings on the car's dashboard or to precisely straighten the steering wheel itself, then, as a direct and inevitable consequence, we would observe highly inaccurate and misleading readings. These erroneous indications would specifically pertain to a car that is actively and persistently attempting to veer dangerously off to the side, exhibiting a clear and concerning tendency to depart from the designated roadway and potentially enter hazardous terrain. That's why it's preferable to make adjustments, if the car allows it, on a vehicle that drives as straightforward as possible. When our alignment diagram clearly shows a leftward reading, it indicates: after adjusting the camber and the caster angle, we move on to adjusting the toe. At this stage, when we are adjusting the toe, it is very important that the steering wheel bar is positioned horizontally. Accordingly, in order to set it as precisely horizontal as possible, a specialized steering wheel level is carefully applied, and the vehicle's wheels are then meticulously aligned according to the steering bar's precise indications. This ensures optimal handling and stability. And then the toe adjustment is carried out. It makes sense to perform this operation with the engine running, since it is important for us that at this time the tie rod ends are under tension from the power steering or electric drive, putting the steering in its working position. It is preferable not to turn off the engine during this process. After successfully completing the precise toe adjustment, you will then need to proceed to the report view and carefully select the remeasurement option to ensure all parameters are accurately recorded. When we perform the precise remeasurement process, the significant weight of the engine and the robust body structure will effectively allow us to accurately load the vehicle's suspension system while carefully turning the front wheels left and right. We will be able to comprehensively load the entire suspension system at all its critical joints, applying force through a full 360 degrees in all conceivable directions, ensuring a thorough and complete evaluation of its structural integrity and performance under various stresses. No alignment technician can truly create such a substantial and significant load on the car with merely their own body weight, as specialized equipment is typically required for such precise measurements. And they definitely can't release the suspension in all directions. To ensure proper alignment and facilitate the next steps, we carefully set the wheels straight, making sure they are perfectly centered and facing forward. Following this, it is crucial to gently but firmly wiggle the steering wheel back and forth a little. This deliberate motion is essential to effectively loosen the tie rod end, which can often become stiff or stuck over time due to various factors, thereby preparing it for easier adjustment or removal during the repair or maintenance process. And after setting the wheels as straight as possible, we look at the steering wheel alignment mark. If the steering wheel alignment mark is horizontal and the car drives perfectly straight, then that's how it will behave on the road. If, on the other hand, the alignment mark is crooked but the car drives straight, it means it will drive with a crooked steering wheel and we need to repeat the toe adjustment. If your vehicle does not permit you to independently fine-tune the caster angle and then subsequently set the toe, if the car doesn't allow you to perform this specific action, and adjusting any of these particular parameters instantaneously influences the readings of the others, you should marginally modify your overall methodology. First, start the car and set the steering wheel alignment mark to horizontal, then adjust the car at 6 points simultaneously. To finish up with the car, go to the print menu and send the report file to print. Remove the clamps with the targets from the car. Take off the depressors from the car and roll the car off to avoid damaging the turntables. Roll the car off the turntables until the rear wheel is off. The main issues that operators encounter when working with the equipment are related to handling the clamp. If the clamp falls off the wheel and gets damaged, the central part can shift and it will no longer be centered on the suspension. If it is not centered on the suspension, it will register non-existent runout from the suspension and distort the alignment readings. If the target housing is not fully inserted into the clamp, the target appears larger than it actually is on the suspension and causes the vehicle's suspension to rotate. As a result, we end up adjusting the vehicle in the wrong direction, which leads to the car pulling to one side. And most often, it is the target housing that gets damaged. The target axis becomes misaligned, and we end up getting completely random readings from the vehicle.
Thank you, Valentin. What can cause the stance alignment system to malfunction?
It can potentially malfunction if the crucial connection between the cameras and their designated targets is unfortunately lost. In what specific way does this occur? The sophisticated cameras are designed to precisely look at the targets, and if there are any significant interferences between these advanced cameras and the targets themselves, such as intense reflections emanating from powerful projectors, blinding headlight glare, or various other types of disruptive glare, then the target might not be accurately read or properly interpreted by the system. Oh, see? The same thing can happen if there are any air blowers or a draft present. If hot air is coming from under the car, it can also interfere and prevent the cameras from properly reading the target.
All right. How would you advise stance alignment operators to take care of the equipment? What should they do and how can they avoid damaging it?
The main thing the operator should do is secure the clamps from falling by using safety rubber bands. If the clamp falls, several problems can occur. The first problem is that the clamp itself can get damaged. Its central part might shift or something might break. If the central part shifts and is no longer fixed at the center of the wheel, but instead starts to wobble, stance won't be aware of this. It will think that the problem is with the car's suspension and will distort the alignment data. If the target is not fully inserted into the clamp, stance will interpret the readings as if the car's suspension is misaligned. We will end up compensating for this in another direction. As a result, you'll have to constantly correct the steering while driving. The main thing is that when it falls, most often the target body gets damaged, the target axis becomes misaligned, and stance simply receives incorrect suspension data from the car. We end up making completely random, incorrect adjustments.
And what about equipment maintenance?
As for equipment maintenance, it's best not to use any cleaning agents on the targets, even if they seem harmless, like brake fluid or anything else, because all of that is very harmful. Accordingly, if your gloves are dirty, you shouldn't wipe them with rags either. The best option, if you need a quick clean, is to use wipes designed for car glass or mirrors. And good, soft wipes, so that whatever the alcohol dissolves can be collected. As for the cameras, it's best to avoid touching them at all. But there's a nuance. In principle, when the equipment is turned off, you can carefully use a small brush to dust them off. You can also gently wipe our LEDs with the same alcohol wipe. It's better not to touch the lens or the optical filter itself. You could scratch the optical filter and then it will become cloudy and won't read information well.
Okay, how often should calibration be done?
Calibration with the tendoscope. It doesn't need to be done at any specific regular interval. It might make sense to periodically check the readings from the tendoscope. and then based on the check see what exactly is happening. This is an issue with the mounts, targets and housings, like if someone broke something there, or if someone actually moved or twisted the cameras relative to each other, then recalibration with the tendoscope might be necessary.
What would you advise the people responsible for the tendoscope, like the operator or administrator?
Well, first of all, make a backup copy. The program allows you to go in and create a backup. It's best to label it with today's date, for example, November 1st. And note that these are the old settings, everything old.
Let's now show you exactly how to do that. I would also recommend saving it to a separate storage device, like a flash drive. Show where you can retrieve this backup from.
In this folder, we can store the factory backup, our own backups, the program version, upload the latest update here, and, if necessary, restore everything on any other computer using this folder. In order to restore everything on another computer, it's best to have this data stored on 2 flash drives. One is kept somewhere in the accountant's safe, the other with the manager. If something happens to the computer, you can always use any other one and restore everything exactly as it was when you made the backup.
What should a client consider before purchasing a wheel alignment stand? Technical specifications, space, the premises. What?
Well, it depends on what equipment they're getting. If we're talking about the C802 stand, we need to make sure it will fit in terms of the distance to the lift or to our pit. Depending on these ranges, we can then choose which stand is better to get, whether it's the C802 or another model. But the C802 has a rather convenient design, and it's easy to adapt it to different conditions. If the distance to the pit, as we have now in this simulation, is about 4 meters to the center of the turntables, then we can even install a fairly tall beam, especially if, for example, there's a door here, an adjacent room for storage, or some kind of passageway for vehicles. If, on the other hand, there's a wall here and, let's say, the pit with the turntables is much closer, then we can move the beam much lower. In some cases, in principle, you can try turning the stand upside down, even hanging it from the ceiling, or lowering this part, not with the cameras, but by making a separate, freestanding unit out of the cabinet. This is necessary when, because of the pit here, we can't get close to it from this side.
I would still like to point out, as the head of the service department, that these are not factory solutions.
They're not factory solutions, but it's a flexible tool that allows us to manage in difficult situations.
Okay, I agree with you on that. Well, based on my experience, I would say that before making a purchase, it's necessary to call in a specialist to inspect the premises and determine whether a wheel alignment system is suitable here, and if so, which one would be best for the client.
Absolutely, because the client's wishes don't always match up with what's actually possible.
And let's also remind everyone about the architectural plan. There have been cases when an equipment installation specialist, upon arrival and starting to drill the floor, would hit a hot water geyser.
Pipes and utilities?
Yes, utilities, underfloor heating, water supply lines to the premises, and so on. Valentin, thank you very much for the information and the training. And if our viewers still have any questions, please leave them in the comments. We'll definitely answer them.
In a broader format? Yes, of course, that is absolutely correct.